Hey guys, so I thought I'd just come on today and give an introduction to myself and the channel and what we're doing. So, this channel is going to be called Time and Sand. My name is Gary Parker. So, who am I and what is this channel about? I'm just a regular guy. I'm not a theologian, I'm not a scientist, but this channel is basically about religion. It's essentially about my journey of what a lot of people refer to as deconstruction. I grew up religious in a very religious household. I was in church every time the doors were open. And in the past 5 years or so, I began to question some things and took some, you've heard the expression, some deep dives, went down some rabbit holes. And in exploring all of that, I made the decision to turn away from my faith and abandon it essentially. This was not an easy process. It was not a quick process. And so that kind of references back to why I decided to name the channel Time and Sand. There's a Christian artist named Sarah Groves, and she put out a song. She had a fantastic album called Conversations, and she's an incredible artist. One of the songs on that album was called "Painting Pictures of Egypt," and there was a line in that song that basically said, "If it comes too quick, I may not appreciate it. I may not recognize it. Is that the reason for all this time and sand?" And that struck a chord with me. And I felt like that song was speaking to this journey that I've been on and questioning the things that I had been taught growing up and the things I've learned since questioning my faith. And like I said, it just really struck a chord with me. So I decided to call the channel Time and Sand and come in here and give you guys an explanation of some of the things I've been through and some of the questions that I asked and that kind of stuff. So we'll get into all those things in future episodes. So this is the studio that we put together. There's other chairs here because the main thing that I'm going to do is bring in family, friends, and have the difficult conversations that most people avoid, things that we disagree about. But instead of avoiding those conversations, we're going to schedule them and come in and have those conversations for you to view and hopefully to learn how to have those difficult conversations with your family and friends if you're questioning, and essentially just show people how you can have different beliefs, but that doesn't mean that you can't care about each other and you can't value each other. So that's the reason. That's what we're doing here, and that's basically an explanation for what is time and sand. So today, I thought I would go through and I would bring up some of the normal questions that we get asked as atheists. Oh, I guess I should explain where I'm at right now. I'm an atheist, and on most days, that's all there is. That's all there is to it. I'm just unconvinced of any of the God claims. There's been thousands of gods made up over the years, from Zeus and Apollo to Thor to obviously Yahweh, the Christian God. I'm unconvinced of any of them, and so on most days, I'm just an atheist. But on some days, when I see certain behaviors taking place, whether it be abuse or indoctrination or some of the manipulation that I see take place in order to keep people in the faith or coerce people into joining the faith. When I see dishonesty, that's when I become a little bit more of an activist and I border more on anti theism instead of just atheism. In other words, on those days, I'm actively opposed to the behavior that I see taking place. And so, who is Gary? I'm an atheist, and on some days, I border on anti theism, and I'm opposed to a lot of the things that I see out there. So, let's get to the questions. So, this is one question that atheists get asked a lot. Why don't you believe? I think the main reason why I don't believe is because a lot of the religious explanations for things, such as origins of the universe, origins of life, they're just implausible. I find it very hard to believe the stories. I don't believe talking snakes or walking on water. I've yet to witness anything, a miracle of any sort, anything that can't be explained naturally. And seen and heard about some pretty extraordinary things. There was a lady when I was growing up that was blind. Of course, she had been to the eye doctor a bunch of times, and of course, after a lot of prayer and this and that, she woke up one day and she had some vision, and then saw some improvements in the weeks and months that followed. Now, some would claim that to be a miracle. Some would claim that was the result of a lot of prayer. I believe that that's her body doing something. Maybe it's something that we don't see all the time. Maybe it's something that's not a regular occurrence. But I still don't believe that it's impossible. I don't believe that she's the only one that's to ever happen to. But when I hear stuff like that, I've just not become convinced of any of the miracle claims or origin stories, especially when you start looking into the science behind things. I've learned a lot along this journey about about evolution and DNA and how we know what we know. The reason I've learned those things is because I've started paying attention to people that study those things. If I want to learn about cars, I'm not going to go to a doctor and ask him automotive questions. If I want to learn about my body or something that's going on with my body, I'm not going to go to my mechanic, you know. So why when I have questions about science, why would I go to someone that's not a scientist that hasn't spent their life studying those specific issues? I'm going to go to the people that study those things that have spent their lives dedicated in that particular field. I'm going to go to the best people that I can to get the best information that I can. And I'll still be skeptical. I'll still ask them, well, how do you know what you know? And they're fine with going through this is what we know. Now that always goes back to a certain point. Well, how do you know this? And how do you know this? And how do you know this? And at some point, you'll get to, well, we don't know that. And I'm fine with that. There's a lot of things that we don't know. But when we get to that spot, it doesn't help us at all to just throw God at the front of the line and say, "Oh, you don't know that thing? Well, that God did that." That hasn't added anything to the conversation. You haven't solved anything because I could just add on more things that we don't know. You could throw in your God, whichever God that may be, but somebody else could throw in their God. Um, so when we get all the way back in our knowledge and we reach the point of, well, we don't know this, that's okay. That's just a time to keep learning and keep exploring and keep investigating these things. So why don't I believe? I'm unconvinced of any of the claims, and some of them are extremely outlandish. Plenty of miracles, plenty of resurrections, and those aren't special to Christianity. If you look back at the history of a lot of the gods and what the stories of those different gods are, there's a lot of different virgin births. There's a lot of different resurrections. There's tons and tons of miracles. There's global destruction stories. This is a very common thing. So I like to say, if you and I were in the religion building business, well, let's start with a virgin birth. Let's have a resurrection. Let's sprinkle in some miracles. We're well on our way. We can fill in a few details and make a story surrounding those things, but that's essentially the seeds of it, and it's very very common. So I'm not convinced for those reasons. I appreciate science and I appreciate the things that we can know about the world and the natural world around us. So, what's the next question here? Where do you get your morality from? This is a very common one. Where do we get our morality from? And this is a challenging one. I like to say, well, you start with some empathy and some compassion. You start with that as a basis, and then you can start filling in a lot of the other blanks after that. But it basically comes down to, I want to treat others not just how I want to be treated, but I want to treat them how they want to be treated. I want to have empathy and compassion for my fellow human being. And so I'll start from that. Don't feel like you can get your morality from just some being or some religious book. Because how do we line up all the religious books? What if you take your religious book and I bring in somebody else and they've got theirs and so now I've got 10 religious books all in front of me. How do we pick and choose which one's right? So essentially we come up with this ourselves. Humanity gets together and has discussions and decides on what's right and what's wrong. Does that change over time? Absolutely, it does. Is it a perfect process? Not at all. Does humanity sometimes decide on that things are right, and then upon rethinking it sometime later, say, you know what? I think we made a mistake and we need to change course a little bit. Absolutely, yeah, we do that. But we're learning and we're trying to get better and we're trying to see what's best for everyone overall. It's an evolving process. We're trying to get better as being human beings all the time. And so when we see atrocities or things that we don't like, we think that shouldn't be allowed, we have discussions and we talk about it and we vote on things and we legislate and say, okay, these things are right, these things are wrong. And individually, we do the same things. You do the same thing in your household, whether it be drinking alcohol or anything else that you choose to do. You have conversations in your own household and say, and you decide what's right for us. And you're not trying to say it's also right for the house down the street or the house next door, or they should live this way. You just say, we're going to live this way. We think that this is appropriate. And you have every right to do that up until the point where you begin interacting with others. Then the discussion between the two of you takes place. As soon as I start trying to live in a neighborhood, then the neighborhood, we get to decide how do we live as neighbors, and that could be loud parties or zoning laws or anything else. We do this as a community. When you don't have interaction with anybody else, there really is no morality. If you were an island, there would be no morality. But as soon as you add another person into the equation, now you start to get some, okay, how do we treat each other? So essentially, where do I get my morality from? We start with empathy and compassion and wanting to treat people well, wanting to increase their pleasure and minimize pain and discomfort. And then we can fill in the details as far as what that means as we go along. But you try to do right by people. So, what's the next question that we have? Why not just believe just in case? This is a good one. It comes up a lot. What harm would there be in just believing? Because what if you're wrong? This is commonly known as Pascal's wager. And there's a lot of good videos out there on Pascal's wager and the pros and cons of it. I guess the first one that comes up in my mind is, well, what if I'm wrong? You know, and you're probably thinking, yeah, what if you're wrong about your God, specifically? But what if I do believe, but just in the wrong God? There's 2,500 different, maybe 3,000 different gods to choose from. What about one of the Hindu gods? And not only that, but I could choose to believe in your God, and then look at all the different denominations. Look at how many different denominations don't consider the other denominations to be true believers. So there you've got an entire group of people that think that they're doing the right thing, but the other believers, they believe that they're not. So who's right there? What if I do choose to believe, but just not in the right way? You know? So I don't take any refuge in, okay, I'll just believe and in that way I'm kind of hedging my bet. I don't think that's a good way to think about the problem. I'm sure I'll have a better explanation or more full explanation, but I'll believe something once I'm convinced of it. And until then, I'll reserve belief. But I'm definitely not going to do it just to hedge my bet. So, what else do we have? Are you mad at God? No, I'm not mad at God at all, mainly because I don't believe in God. I don't believe any more than I would be mad at Superman or Santa Claus or anything else. I don't believe in it. Where does my anti-theism come from? Well, that's not me being mad at God. That's me being upset with people using a certain religion in order to exercise power or control over someone else, be it their own family, spouses, kids, their own community. Could even be an entire group of people, one nation exerting control over another nation, or wanting to. That's where my anti theism comes in. But that doesn't mean that I'm mad at God. I'm mad at people and how they use their different versions of God in order to control people. So, yeah, I'm not mad at God at all. Did someone hurt you? No, I can't say that I was traumatized by religion. I can't say that, you know, I had some terrible experience or anything like that. So no, I can't really claim that I'm hurt by religion. I like to believe true things, and I don't want to, if I can at all avoid it. I don't ever want to believe in false things. If somebody came up to me and said, "Hey Gary, you have this belief, but I want to let you know that I have very strong evidence that it's incorrect and that your thinking is flawed in this area." I want to know that. So no, no one hurt me. And that's not the reason for my disbelief. My disbelief comes from wanting to believe true things and not wanting to believe false things. All right, so what do we got next? Where did we come from, if not God? So this is an origin question. This could be in relation to the origins of the universe, or it could be a question of the origins of life, specifically humans. I believe all of those, whether it be the universe, whether it be life itself, the human species, I believe there's natural explanations for those things. Do we know everything about all of those? Do we know what was around, what was going on before the Big Bang, or even immediately following it? Not necessarily so, but we're still exploring those areas. And again, this is where I go back to the scientists and people that study this um, for years on end. And when they come out with a new discovery, it's peer reviewed and it's put under pressure. And other people also in that field that are knowledgeable try to look for any kind of flaws in their research, in their calculations. So it's not an easy process to say, okay, now we know, now we know this, because you're going to have other people just as knowledgeable as you that are questioning and trying to punch holes in that. So there's questions of or these questions of origins. I look to the scientists for those explanations, and we don't have any of those that require a deity. Let's see, another good question. What would be good evidence for you if I was to see something that can't be explained naturally? This is not a perfect answer because if I see technology that I haven't been educated about, if you went back 100 years ago and showed someone a cell phone, they would think it was they would think it was magic, or they would think it was a miracle. I could be exposed to technology that I'm not currently aware of and just be mesmerized by it. So I don't know that that would necessarily be well, I know it wouldn't be a miracle. That would just be my ignorance. So if I was to see something that I couldn't explain, then that would at least make me question some things. But I would still wonder if I was under some sort of a misapprehension, if my brain was somehow having a glitch in it. I would question those things first, and I would look for some sort of a natural explanation. I heard Matt Dillahunty one time, uh, actually more than one time. I heard him a bunch of times say, "I don't know what would convince me, but a God, especially the Christian God, would absolutely know what would convince me." So the fact that I'm not convinced is not even really my problem. Why hasn't your God presented to me what he knows would convince me? And so it kind of takes the burden of proof, off of someone. I'll be convinced when I'm shown evidence that is convincing. So far, I haven't been shown any. So what would convince me? I'm not sure. I, I don't really know. I can't give you a specific thing, but a God would know. So I guess I'll wait on him to show me that. So what do I believe happens after death? I think what happens after death is the same thing that happened before I was born. Um, and I think I'll be bothered by it the exact same amount. The 10,000 years before I got here, I wasn't I wasn't bothered by it. I wasn't antsy. Like, man, I can't wait for the day that I finally get to be born. Won't that be awesome? I was just completely unaware. And I think that the same thing will be, I think the case will be the same after I'm gone. I won't be aware of it. There won't be some part of me that says, "Oh, I wish I was back there." And I haven't heard any convincing evidence that there is any sort of an afterlife. I've heard stories. I've heard of near death experiences. I've heard of people seeing bright lights and talking to dead relatives and having out of body experiences and floating above the room. And, but the more you dig into these claims, the more they're falsified. And you got to remember the brain, when it's deprived of oxygen, it does some crazy things and gives you some crazy thoughts. And so I'm not convinced by the out of body experiences or the near death experiences or anything like that. Am I afraid of dying? I'm not afraid of being gone. The process of dying, yeah, that's concerning a little bit. No one wants to be incapacitated or imbecilic. No one wants that. And right now, while I'm alive, do I dread the thought of the party going on once I'm gone? Yeah, a little bit. No, nobody wants to think, you know, I'm going to be gone, but the people that I love and even people that I don't know, they're going to carry on. And then there's going to be another generation and another generation. And what are they going to do? And what are they going to discover? What are they going to invent? What sort of a world are they going to live in? And I won't be here for that. That's not exactly a comforting thought, but I think no one wants to miss the party or miss the big show, so to speak. But that's what makes this life that much more valuable, and it makes me want to value the time that I'm here and make the most of it and do my best to contribute and show the people that are around me that I love them and I care about them and to be the best me that I can be. So anyway, so I guess that I hope that gives a bit of an introduction to the channel and who I am and all that. I want to say this. Are these the answers that I've given to these questions? Are they perfect answers? Absolutely not. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a philosopher. I'm just a regular guy. I'm in the construction industry. I make countertops here in Nashville, Tennessee. So these are just my answers, and also they're just my answers right now. Are these going to be the same answers that I give in 10 years? Probably not. I would hope not, in fact. The reason that I don't want them to be the same answers that I give in 10 years is because hopefully I learn some things. Hopefully I dig down into some of these topics a little bit more and I get better, fuller explanations for things and I explore these topics a little bit more. So these won't always be my answers, but they're my answers for today and they're my explanations for right now. So I hope you come back and see when I gather in here with some friends, and we're going to have Christians, we're going to have atheists, we're going to ask each other questions, we're going to challenge each other, and we're going to have some difficult conversations. And I hope you come back to check it out. Thanks.